Hello there, and welcome to Dance of the Soul, one of the last two or three of them. And Regan is supposed to be here, but yet he is on a journey of excitement. He told me that he emailed me this morning saying that he is doing some acting gigs. Acting gigs? There we go. Acting gigs. So it's going to be one of those things, but he really wanted to have this conversation about how do you have conversation through change, right? Because he said something to me that was amazing, and I can maybe speak for us in that dance. But Dance of the Soul is now going to be on Wednesdays with me doing my Everyday with an Angel podcast. So I'm excited about that doorway. And, I just feel like everything's going to get more in alignment with this podcast. No matter what the name was, but it was just change was needing to happen. And obviously, it was needing to happen because now Regan has opportunities on Monday afternoon. And that's the thing when you're going through change, and you feel like you made the better choice, or you go with the flow, I'm going to call it, because there was this feeling that I was having coming up, being the intuitive, multi-life intuitive. I'm Natasha Venter, and I'm going in this conversation backwards, and I apologize, but I'm human, and that's one of those things. And hey Veronica, thank you for being here with me, and I'm grateful that you like the title. But so, as you go with the change, and I've been feeling this change coming on since the beginning of, almost the beginning of the year, that things have been like building up, that some had to change with my podcast. And that's the thing is that when I went down to California, that my girlfriend, she came home the first day I was with her, came home from after her workout and saying, I got told by the spirit, this is the name of your new podcast. How do you like it? I went, I love it. It's mine. So bought the domain, going with it. And then, going through the change. Well, it took us, I knew that I was going to change at least life clarifications with Natasha. Right. But the thing is, though, something was changing up for the Dance of the Soul also. And whenever I saw the single podcast, I saw my YouTube channel just thinning up, getting simpler. Like my shorts were going to be now shorts for the podcast, right? So everything was going to kind of slim down into kind of that thing and I knew that I was kind of holding myself back a little bit doing these podcasts. In a reference, not, I wasn't holding myself back, but there was some part of me that was saying I needed to be more my truer self, speak more boldly, speak more, doing that. And Regan and I do that. It's not about that, but there was something about staying on the surface. And so going into being every day with an angel love, anybody knows me in a day-to-day basis, that they know that I come to whatever I am with love and kindness. And I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal. I'm not, but I'm here to say though, that I'm human, and how does the earthly work in this moment? Well, it took me, and this is the conversation today, was how do you have conversation through change? Whew. Well, how do you have conversations during change, or when you feel that change needs to happen? Right? Well, Regan said I did it so well with him. Basically, and I know that Regan would talk about this, but he was saying that, making sure he's not texting me here, that as we're going forward, that that's not him. Okay, so that when we're going forward here, that I was saying, hey Regan, hey, I just want to do a check-in, and sometimes when we have a conversation with change, coming in pretty neutral is a way to do it. And I'm not patting myself. He told me I did this well, so that's the reason why I'm talking about this, especially without him here. That like he said, you did this so well. And I said, basically, hey, do you how are you feeling about our podcast? I've noticed that, on Mondays, there's a lot of times where you're on the road or that kind of thing. And I know that we've done this, and I love being on a show with you. But how are you feeling about it? And he said, actually, it's funny because Patty, my wife, she basically asked me, how long are you going to be doing these podcasts on Monday? And it's funny because she's pretty intuitive also. And so with that, as we were doing this and going forward, that he was saying that actually I would I really like doing these shows too. But and then as I was talking to him about it, I said, yeah, there's just some change that is feeling like it was needing to be happening. And that's what called me to change this, because we can keep doing things the same way. I really enjoy it, but there's something that's going to be changing here. And I just want to check in how much of the change is going to happen, either both shows or just one show. And he says, actually, you know what? The more I'm thinking about it, the more I just want to be on people's shows. I don't want to have to be. I know that this show, Dance the Soul, is more yours. You do the producing, you do the loading, you do all the work. You come up with a lot of the ideas. Sometimes I do, but it's mainly your show. And he says that I would rather just be on a show instead of more of a co-host, right? And I go, okay, what does that look like to you? And I said, you don't have to give me an answer now, but that answer would be something that maybe next time we can check in with it, give it a week. And, like he was saying that, that's one thing that I noticed when you're having conversations through time, that or around change, that we get on our own timeline, but then other people aren't on their timelines. And we have to allow time to get into theirs. And that's the thing is that I gave him a week, even though he kind of already gave me an answer, him wanting to be on a show. And I said that, would you want to be on this show, the Every Day with an Angel show? And he said, well, yeah, I can do that. And I said, wait a minute, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's take a step back, and you give me answers for next time. You decide what you want to do for next time. And he said, okay. And so with that we waited a week, and then he came on and said, Natasha, what day are you thinking about the show? And I said, Wednesdays, keeping with Wednesdays and just changing angelic or life clarifications with Natasha to be on the new show. And he said, well, why don't I do this? What it looks like is I can do the third Wednesday. I said, oh, okay. Yes, because I don't want to miss you. I don't want to, I miss you. I want to be with you still. So Regan is going to be on the every third Wednesday of Every Day with an Angel. So going back to the conversation of this, that when we're working on life and when we're doing things with our dance, that life isn't always easy, but having conversations through change is vital. And how do you do it, right? How do you do it? And, it's not any good or bad or anything like that. It is what it is. But, our story is not always a blessing, right? And I really want Regan here, so I keep checking my phone. But, it is a story. And, conversations are amazing. And I know that, like having a conversation with someone that I care about, and, checking in with them and saying, hey, what would we like for dinner? This is some of my ideas, right? But coming in more neutral, I find, and I'm a very soft person. I'm not that pushy of a person. I hope. I can be quite impatient though with some things, and I do get pushy. Like if somebody doesn't text me and I really get this pushing, I get this feeling about something, and I kind of have to take a seat back, right? Because I'm human. I'm human. And when we're in the story of doing communication and doing life and maneuvering with other people, we can't always take on what other people perceive, right? And so, how do we dance with this conversation when we are negotiating with other people? Everybody's going through change right now of some fashion. Some of it is doing internal work, some of it is changing jobs, some of it is trying to find a job, some of it is relationships upgrading, some of it is some relationships are downgrading, some relationships are, co-workers are coming in. How do we have conversations with our boss when we know something's going to happen or things are happening? It's like, how do you take somebody off the pedestal, or how do you take someone out of their total understanding of them being in power, right? So with that conversations during change are one of those things that having your feet in one shoe and having another foot in the other person's ideas is not always something that we can stand in our own and power with. And that's the thing is that there's a fine line being empowerment, that empowerment of who we are and what we're doing. So that empowerment is about standing strong in what we believe in. Because sometimes, like for me, sometimes I like to be too nice and then I lose my power. I get out of rhythm. And so then I start having them have more power. Well, no, it's not about them having more power, and it's not about me having power. It's about having a communion together. How can we both be lifted up through this situation? And change is not easy for everybody, or anybody for that matter, right? So when we're going through the change of life and managing our story, that it is the dance of being who we are. And no matter where you're at and what you're doing, that you're going to be human, and there's going to be mistakes, and there's going to be mistalk, and there's going to be misunderstandings, and there is going to be something, right? But what can we do with it? Make it right by slowing down, getting involved with the bigger story. What is happening in this story, right? And then what do we do with it on a lot of different things? And I'm kind of a little bit discombobulated today, and I apologize. I was really hoping Regan was going to have this conversation with me. Kind of going through grief, right? When you go through change, doesn't grief hit you? Yeah, so I'm going to alter this conversation a little bit, because I know that this is coming down to Regan and I have had this show for 2.5 years, almost 3 years, because September would have been third year. And, as we were going forward, that, knowing that there's change and you're part of that reason for change, even though I felt like that he was going to have to back out at some point in time, right? But isn't it interesting how grief hits you during change? And conversations during change isn't easy when you're in grief, right? And I know that there's some people who have an understanding of how to negotiate this, but how do you think about it before you go and have a conversation, or before you get into that change? Sometimes isn't something that you always come out of it saying the same thing that you thought you were going to say, right? How many times do you pre-think what you're going to say, and then actually you say something totally different? That's part of being in the emotions of life, right? So conversation during change, conversations during life, many of us are struggling with how to have a conversation in the middle of a struggle. And it's just one of those things that, how do we negotiate this? Remember, being human is part of it. A lot of us don't give ourselves credit for being human, right? We want to be perfect all the time. We can't be perfect all the time. And when we're going forward in a lot of change and in a lot of, like right now, the planets are, there's a lot of planets in retrograde right now, and or going into retrograde. And I know Mercury's going into retrograde, and that's something that happens 3 times a year. So we're kind of getting used to that one, right? It's pretty impactful a lot. And that's about communication, electronics, scenarios here and scenarios there, right? But yet at the same time, though, we want to be perfect. And who's perfect? Who's perfect? And that's why I said at the beginning of this show about how we can kind of preference something ahead of time. Hey, you know, um, I'm kind of discombobulated right now, so I'm not saying things as clearly as I wanted to. Well, there again, it gives people an opportunity to be. It's kind of like for me in the morning. The last couple mornings, and my nephew Derek is here for the summer, and like he's even said, Natasha, I'm not in your world, but I can sure tell you when you're not in your body. you know, I'm not a mean non-morning person, but yet at the same time, though, having a conversation, you're gonna have to understand that I am not I can be very tongue-tied, right? So that's okay though, because we're all human when we're going through life. And, you know, our story is not going to be about, what's the word that our story isn't going to be about how do we negotiate this in the perfection that we want. For one, take yourself off the list of perfection. Take yourself out of wanting to have that perfect conversation, because once you have a conversation, somebody else is coming in. It's just not the conversation you have in your head, right? One-sided. There's going to be two sides. And somebody's going to hear you totally different than what you think you're saying it, because their perception is their perception. So that's where I lead in with a lot of preferences. Hey, it's morning time. I'm discombobulated with my mouth. Make sure I'm saying the right thing. Okay, yeah, that makes sense, right? And then what do you do when you are in the middle of a huge argument, right? How do you have that conversation when you're in a huge argument? Wow. Well, I know for me that I started doing something that, I preference before something happens. You know, I am not liking how this conversation is going. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to leave the room right now to give us both a break. And then do it. Right? Because it's about being kind. I know that there's been upset that has happened because, when you have an argument, that's about change, right? That, where you have a conversation and you don't really have the words to answer them with, because no answers are going to be right. No words are going to be right. And so what do you say? Nothing, right? Or you say too much. I'm one that I choose to say nothing because I don't want to get something out of my mouth that I'm going to regret. So I preference a lot of things by being more, what's the word? Oh, more, I don't want to say that I don't say what I want to say, but I also know that sometimes I can't say what I want to say at the time when somebody is upset. And I know that a lot of us have relationships with people who tend to be on the narcissistic timeline, right? Well, being on that narcissistic timeline, many times that gets it where we can't say things at that time that we want to say them. And it's actually a good thing, because then people get defensive, right? So what I'm going to suggest is that you wait for a different time to happen. and choose your time, choose your voice, choose your intention. That's huge. What is my intention? Is my intention to get back at somebody, or is it my intention to deem somebody wrong? Is it my intention uh, to be right? Is it my intention to be out of place with things, right? And so moving into life and going into life, it's not easy to know when to say something. But I can tell you though that there's been times where like I've been with someone who's been upset and the blow up is done, right? And then there's the after effect of it. And somebody's sitting there kind of on the couch and kind of going, well, sometimes that's the time that I choose to come in and say, hey, I didn't mean to, I didn't know what to say, so I stayed quiet. I'm trying to do my better here. I don't want us to fight, you know, and this is the reason why this domino effect happened, whatever we were talking about, right? It's not wrong or right that we are wrong or right, but it's how do we negotiate to get things to a better place? And that's talking ourselves through change. Because relationships can change, right? Relationships really can change, but it takes us, one person, to start adding something else besides the same old story that we've been in. And I can tell you that right now, with all the planets in retrograde right now that are going into retrograde, they're really asking us to look at our old story and how do we want to change it. So the conversation through change is going to be the blessing. And that means, what is your intention? Okay, so there's a couple of you watching right now, and I would love to hear some of your stuff that you are negotiating with change. Because of the fact that, and how can I help you go through what you're going through? Um, and how do we talk to someone who is, I know that, like, I have a friend that's just lost two people in his life, and you know um uh okay, so he'll see me next week. I had a feeling that he texted me. It's that thing that, how do we help someone go through the grief process, through that change? Many of us don't know how to say something to somebody who's going through grief, right? I even struggle with that, and I understand grief. You know, I a lot of times say my love is with you. You know, um, I don't want to give my heart away. I like my heart. My heart beats strong for my body. But my love, that's free for the giving, right? And a lot of us give our bodies away when we are wanting to say, "Oh, my heart breaks for you. Oh, my gut just aches for you," or whatever it is, right? No, my love aches for you. My love aches for you. My love goes to you. I'm sending angels your way. I'm sending kindness and support when you need it. And I will be checking in with you after a lot of things are happening, right? So, how do you negotiate some of this change? But it's conversation first, a little bit, to see where somebody is. And you never know where somebody is, but checking in with them. What is going on with them? What is where we're at? What is happening with this negotiation? Be kind with you. That's important. Be kind to you. And no matter where you're at and what you're doing, you are important enough to stand in your empowerment during change and during conversations of change. Please don't make any one person more important to you than you are to yourself, but don't make yourself more important than them. It's called neutrality. And that's my suggestion to you is that try to be in neutrality, but yet be strong in you. You know, be your own being, right? And if we have to have a conversation with a boss in change, there is a way to be kind about it. There's a way to negotiate it, and there's a way to have an intention of sitting back. I know that I had to have a conversation with. I work in a situation for 4 hours in the morning, and this person was not necessarily negotiating with me very well. I had to many times in that conversation come back to my intention, and I had to restate my intention. The reason why I'm restating this, or I wanted to have this conversation, was to make sure that we had communication straight about a situation. That was the intention for calling this meeting. And if we come back to what our conversation is, and I know that I'm having conversations with somebody this summer, and he reminds me that don't get trailing off into Never Never Land. Come back to what it is. Okay, so the conversation we just had circles around to. So, like for me, having a talk about the universe, right? And the matrix system and all that kind of stuff. Well, one question can trigger that conversation, right? And this conversation can actually lead to a lot of change because it's breaking open ideas, right? Well, I can get off into Never Never Land, but then I get reminded that, hey, come back to what the question was. Then I restate what the question was, right? And that question goes, and so then I can lead into what I was talking about into that conversation. Oh, the question was, is there a matrix system? Long story around the short block sometimes, because the matrix system is a pretty big conversation, right? But the conversation was, is there a matrix system? Then I repeat the question, is there a matrix system? Well, this whole conversation's been about that, but simply, matrix system, it's all about what am I doing right now? That's the important thing, is what am I doing right about now, right? So that comes down to conversations also. What are we doing right now? A lot of times in conversations, our mind likes to wander off, right? And goes into our story and goes into this conversation, goes into that conversation, goes into over here, goes into that. And what about this? And what about this? Well, nobody hears me doing this. And nobody hears me about that. Come back. What is actually being said in this conversation? What is that person doing in that conversation? What is their body language? What is how we're doing life, right? So being in the moment of conversation through change, because conversation creates change, because perspectives come in, right? So how are you doing with conversations and change? How are you doing with what's happening in your life? How are you doing with all these Mercury in retrograde moments, new moon? I think the new moon's coming up. All these different things, right? How can we negotiate this idea of change in the moments, right? So be you, be kind to you, because uh, it is about being respectful to yourself and being respectful to other people. So, and I know that me being a multi-life intuitive, me being psychic, me being a medium and all that kind of stuff, I get a bigger picture of certain things, but I can tell you, you can do a lot of the same thing, right? You can bring these conversations down to being respectful of you and what your intention is, and being respectful of somebody else who may not have that intention, because not everybody's awake, not everybody's thinking about stories, right? And namaste to you too. Was it Barth Barthazu 83? I'm sorry, I didn't say that very well. So thank you very much for commenting on this. It's one of those things that how we all come from somebody else's story, and And that's the thing. So going back over this a little bit. So going into when we're having a conversation through change, that there is a story of our own things going off in the head, right? And then how do we negotiate other people, what they're saying in their story? Well, I know for me, sometimes I can't deal with the heightened conversation. When things start coming up, when things start rising up, voices start getting louder, I say, whoa, 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 honey, or somebody, or whatever their name is, can we just take a breath for a moment? Because this is not where I wanted to go in this conversation. My intention was to ask you, what would you like to do in this situation? Right? And when we're in this conversation, many a times that we get lost. So that's where it's very important when you're going into a conversation, and conversations create change, that you go into having this deeper sense of yourself. What is your intention? Where are you going with this? And what are you doing? So today is one of those days that I'm hoping that your conversations and this conversation that I had on Dance of the Soul, which is now closing down into being on Wednesdays, Every Day with an Angel, that going into who you are and what you're becoming and going through finding yourself, that you come back to being kind to you and being kind to others. It's not about who's right or wrong. It's about how can we do better? What can we do that's better? And when we can come into an understanding that nobody is right, it's about righting a ship. And that's one thing that I understand, that I'm not about being right or wrong. It's about righting the ship. It's kind of like if you think about a ship in a cargo in the water, right? And its cargo is out of balance. What happens to a ship? It tips over, right? Well, I want to right my ship. So righting my ship, getting my ship righted so it can go well. All the cargo is more righted, which means taking in your perspective, taking in my perspective, taking in my story, taking in your story, so that we can create a better combination, right? And sometimes conversations don't always happen in our time. So this is where I preference sometimes conversations. I say, hey, I'm wanting to have a conversation about this with you. Tell me when's a good time, please. And sometimes a good time is right now. Sometimes it's 10 minutes from now. Let me go to the bathroom first, and then I'll be willing to have a conversation. Let me get something to eat first so I have I'm not getting the hangries while we're talking, right? And that's actually a new word that I've come up with, the tigries. We don't want to talk to somebody when they have the tigries. They're tired and they're hangry because they're tired, right? Find the better time. Like for me, sometimes my conversations that I had with my kids was when they were playing video games, because there's a part of them that was distracted and they were able to have a good conversation, right? Trying different times for different things. There is a moment where we are perfectly imperfect. We are human, and we're doing the dance. We're doing the dance of the soul. That's why Regan and I really like this conversation, was the dance of the soul. Because when we're walking in life, what is our soul supposed to learn? Lessons in life, experiences, growing, changing, knowing more. And so how do you negotiate that? Well, by having a perspective. What is this here to teach me? What am I supposed to do about this? Where am I supposed to go with that? So it's time to believe in you. It's time to believe in their story. And remembering that, if you have a partner in life, I always have a picture of, like when you have the over in Greece and they have those really strong white pillars, right? And then there's a roof. Well, two strong pillars make a roof, hold up a roof well, right? And two strong people in a relationship with kindness, with grace, giving each other grace, understanding that we're all human, can make a good foundation. So that's where this is my story. This is your story. How can we honor both stories? To have a righted ship going down the road. All we can do is try, right? All we can do is try. So our story is this, our story is that. And having conversations is how we get to know each other better, right? So with that, today's show is going to be a little bit shorter because of the fact that I had a busy day already and I want to honor this moment of me and my body. So with that today is going to be a shorter one. This is the dance of the one of the last of the Dance of the Souls. Regan will be with me on Monday, next Monday, and we'll probably continue this conversation because he'll have great perspective. There is magic coming in at the beginning of September, and I will talk more about it on Life Clarifications with Natasha, probably the last of August here. But I'm going to give some hints coming up that both podcasts, Dance of the Soul and Life Clarifications, is going to be Wednesdays at 4:00 Pacific time, and it's going to be every day with an angel. That's going to be conversations about life. I'm going to be opening up a little bit more about myself here. So card readings are going to be involved, but they're going to be readings. They're not necessarily going to be readings. That made sense. So in other words, I'm going to be intuitively giving readings and not just reading a book. I'm also going to be possibly doing a little bit more of my inner story of spirit and how I perceive spirit. I'm going to be talking a lot about life. There's going to be many things that aren't going to be changing. I'm going to be talking about life, bringing the spirit world to the earthly realm is my intention. What does the universe want to show me? Like this over here, right? It's going to be a doorway. How are we going to walk through that doorway of life? So with that, starting on September 1st, it's going to be that. What's going to be amazing is that on the 1st of every month is my friend Susie Parker Goins is going to be on. And so she's going to be for about the next 6 months, going to be the 1st of every month. And she and I are going to have great conversations. And then the 3rd Wednesday of every month is going to be, Regan Forston, who he's going to have conversations with me. So he's not going away. He's just going to be on once a month instead of every week. And then there's going to be twice a month that it's going to be just me or another guest. And so I'm going to have on the 2nd Wednesday of the month, I am going to be I'm going to have Stacy. Her name just went out of my head. I was just on her podcast, and she's going to be on my podcast. So the first month of Every Day with an Angel is going to be busy with people, and I am excited. Thank you very much for that comment, and big respects to you too. I'm so forever grateful. So with that, I'm offering you some love. I'm offering you some guidance. I also do private sessions. I would love to do that. I am being told to pull a card. I'm being told to pull a universal card here for this energy that's coming in. So here we go. So put my cards. Pull an angel card here. What's this card wanting to do? So with this new show, I'm not sticking to any one belief. It's going to be a combination of different beliefs. So we're going to hear from many deities. I'm going to talk about many different things. Oh, mm-hmm. I cannot make this up. I really cannot make this up. The universe is so in sync with us. Look at these two cards, Hawk and Partnership. What did I say? Get a bigger vision when you're talking, when you want to have a good partnership, right? So Hawk is about getting a bigger vision, messages, omens. Take the bigger view. Sometimes we can't take the view that's right in front of our face, right? When we're talking about things. So Hawk, I use Hawk a lot of times when I want to get a bigger vision. What is truly going on in this room? What kind of conversations? What is the bigger message? Sometimes it's not that somebody is mad at somebody. Sometimes it's somebody's really hurt and they're sad, and it's a story, right? So get a bigger vision, because if we want partnerships, we need to look at it a little differently. We need to have a bigger vision. We need to have a bigger understanding. And as I understand that when we're walking down the path, it's about what is your perspective, right? So if we want a partnership, if we want to have a partnership, then we need to look at things a little bit more bigger in the Hawk's vision. Because it isn't about who's right or wrong. It's about who can we help get bigger? How can we build each other up? How can we maneuver this life that we have? How can we support each other through their story and their learning process? By having the Hawk's vision for the partnership in life. Blessed be to you, and know that you're loved. And no matter who you are with, there's always an angel or guides with you. So listen to those ideas that pop in your head when you are negotiating your world. Your guides are trying to talk to you now, so be with it. Okay? Listen to them. That's that inner voice that comes to you sometimes. So trust that process. I'm Natasha Venter, AngelicClarifications.com. Grateful to be here with you. I will be here on Wednesday. Not sure yet what the conversation is yet, but I will be here on Wednesday on the same platforms, giving guidance. One of my last life clarifications with Natasha. Blessed be to you. If you like any of this, please support by liking or sharing, or if you would like to follow, that'd be a blessing. Have a great day. Have a blessed life. And know you're perfectly imperfect as you're learning how to be human. Blessing bees to you. Natasha Venter, AngelicClarifications.com.